Alright, so we're here with the UFC 305 Plessis versus Adesanya predictions and breakdowns. Yeah, card I've been waiting for ages. I was hoping it might happen last year, but obviously it ended up getting pushed back to now. With obviously Dricus being injured last year for the Sydney card, and then Strickland stepping in and then threw the spanner in the works by beating Izzy, and then obviously we had the Dricus Strickland fight at UFC 297 back in January in Canada. And now we're finally getting, about a year later than it was supposed to be, we're finally getting Dricus versus Adesanya. All the stuff surrounding the fight aside, I'm really excited for this fight. I think it's going to be a super good fight. Yeah, and I'm looking forward to seeing what each guy can do against each other. A decent card behind it. I like the main card quite a lot. Obviously, you got some New Zealand talent on there with Kai France and Dan Hooker in the co-main and featured bouts, and then you got a Tai Tuivasa fight, which is also always good fun, and then Prates versus Li Jingliang, which I think is a great main card opener. Yeah, and then other than that, obviously the prelims, which we'll get into. Yeah, so first we'll quickly have a look at how we went last week in the predictions for Tybura versus Spivak. Obviously you can see there, got the first fight wrong. I watched that one. Yeah, I didn't really know a hell of a lot, so I'm not really surprised I got that one wrong. A little bit surprised about the Denise Williams result. Really did think Williams was going to get that done. Gregorio versus Kazama. Again, I wasn't too familiar with either of the guys. I was just going with a style that I thought would win. Didn't. And obviously in the main event, to be honest, I feel like Tybura did get caught, and if, based off what I saw in that fight, if I was to pick that fight again, I'd probably stick with Tybura because I think he would have eventually got it done. But that's right, got caught in a sub. All the other ones got right: Mariscal, Barlow, Gutierrez, Santos, Rosa, and Zalal. We won't spend too much time on it, we'll get going, but overall, the pick rate's at just basically 60% correct, which is fairly solid. Would like that to improve, but we'll keep going. So, starting off with the early prelims, opening up we got Stuart Nickel, the local guy out of Australia, versus Jesus Aguilar. Obviously Nickel's got that hometown advantage with the fights being in Perth. I think he'll get it done by decision. I think he'll utilise some control and his own takedown defense, holding up against Aguilar, who's a pretty strong grappler. So yeah, I've just gone Stuart Nickel by decision. He's got enough to get it done. I'll whip through these pretty fast. Song Kanan versus Ricky Glenn. Song Kanan has lost to some fairly good prospects. He's actually also fought both Adesanya and Brad Riddell, which is really interesting. Obviously a lightweight and a middleweight. I think obviously Brad Riddell probably fought him up at welterweight, and then I'd say Song Kanan went up to middleweight to fight Izzy, because I don't think there's any world where Izzy could make welterweight. But yeah, he's lost to some fairly good prospects, obviously with Ian Gary and Kevin Jesse recently, off the top of my head. And Ricky Glenn's coming up to welterweight off back-to-back KOs at lightweight. I don't really rate Ricky Glenn that highly. He doesn't have the best movement, really, so... And I think Song Kadan's solid. He showed up pretty well against Ian Gary, who's proven to be really good since, like possibly a higher level than anyone ever thought he was coming in. So yeah, I'm going to go Song Kadan also by decision here. Bit of a slow start to the card, but it should pick up in the next fight. Tom Nolan versus Alex Reyes. Tom Nolan a minus 1200 favourite here. Reyes a plus 750 dog. I think this is probably lined almost correctly. I think Tom Nolan's going to smoke him. Obviously, Tom Nolan coming in, I think he won one fight by knockout in the UFC and then it slipped up against Motta. But he had been, as I say, a bit of a buzzsaw before that, coming through everyone that he sort of had come up against. So for this one, I've got Nolan by knockout or TKO. It doesn't really matter which one. Yeah, I think he's going to get it done here against Raz. I'm super confident he's going to win. I'm even more I'm confident he's going to get the knockout. I'm even more confident that he's going to win. So yeah, we'll move on to the regular prelims. Not the Fight Pass ones, they're just the ESPN prelims, I guess. Anyway, opening it up, Jack Jenkins, Herbert Burns. I think the UFC are trying to get Jack Jenkins back on track here after that nasty arm injury against Chippy Mariscal. which was unfortunate because I think he probably maybe might have beaten Chepe anyway. I don't know. I think the leg kicks, Jack Jenkins throws nasty leg kicks. Like, you see like guys like Izzy and I guess Volk and that like throw like the sort of tappy leg kicks, where it's like Jack Jenkins like winds up and just like kicks as hard as he can kicks through his opponent rather than just tapping. Minus 800 favourite here, huge against Herbert Burns. I don't think Burns has the striking acumen to beat Jack Jenkins on the feet, and I think he lacks the wrestling to take Jenkins down, despite that he's got good jiu-jitsu. Herbert Burns does, but I think he lacks the ability to take the fight to the ground himself. So unless he scores a knockdown or something, I can't really see him getting much of an upper hand. I think obviously Burns has some pretty suspect cardio as well. I think in the past that's come into play. I've got Jack Jenkins by knockout / TKO. I think the leg kicks will have an impact. I don't think it'll get stopped due to a leg injury, but I could definitely see like him feinting the leg kicks and then going high maybe, or the legs of Herbert Burns becoming so unusable that really does play into the stoppage. I feel like it's going to have an impact anyway. Moving on to Casey O'Neill versus Luana Santos. I'm pretty sure O'Neill's got the more skill in this matchup. I don't know. They're both pretty young. O'Neill's 26, Santos 24. Santos is on a 3-fight win streak, but I'm not overly impressed by her opponents. I'm just trying to remember who they were. I think we had Agapova last time out, and her first one of those 3 was against Juliana Miller, who came off tough, who isn't great, and someone in the middle there that wasn't all that good either. And O'Neill has had some losses recently, don't get me wrong, but I think they've been against like tougher opponents, sort of that next level up, and I think that's the reason why, because I think O'Neill's about a $2.40 underdog here, or plus 140 underdog. So I think that's possibly playing into it a bit. There's a bit of bias around Casey O'Neill's recent results, less her performances. So yeah, I've got Casey O'Neill by decision here. I think she's going to get it done across the distance of the 3 rounds. And then next up, Josh Culibao versus Ricardo Ramos. This is a tough one because both are coming off back-to-back losses. I do see a path to victory here for Ricardo Ramos. Culibao, I do really like. I think he's a good fighter. He's pretty smart, but Ramos makes some suspect decisions at times, which I think could get him in trouble with Culibao, because Culibao does have a decent instinct for, not necessarily like a finishing instinct, but an instinct to like take advantage of mistakes, if you know what I mean. Like, if Ricardo Ramos does something stupid, Culibao will take him down and hold him there for the rest of the round, or if he makes a mistake on the feet, he'll tag him and make him pay for that, and that'll have an impact on the rest of the fight. Could win by finish, but I'm going Culibao by decision here. I think he gets it done across the distance. Then, in the prelim headliner, we've got Junior Tafa versus Walter Walker. I think Junior is the better, because obviously you see Tafa, it's like, yeah, there's the 2 Tafa brothers. I think Junior's the better out of the 2, to be honest. I think he's a bit faster, and I think his striking is just a little bit more dynamic. But I guess that doesn't really matter, because we're not comparing them, we're looking at who's going to win this fight. I think Walker's pretty average. He was made a pretty big favourite on his debut, was he? Or did he? No, he lost his debut. But I think he's pretty hyped coming in. I think he's sort of fallen off because he's obviously Johnny Walker's brother. I don't know, sort of a bit of a pick I'm making based off the fact that I prefer one fighter's style more than the other. And I think that's going to be enough to get it done for him. So I've gone Junior Tafa by KO TKO. I think the sort of home ground advantage, like for all these guys, well, I've just realised I've picked all of the Australians against all the Brazilians. That's crazy, I didn't notice that before. But yeah, I think the hometown advantage is really going to play key here for these guys. So that's my picks for the prelims. We'll jump into the main card, starting with Li Jingliang versus Carlos Prates. Carlos Prates coming off the back of that win against Charles Radke. Trevin Giles, Mitch Ramirez, and then those 2 other fights are LFA fights, I believe. And then Li Jingliang coming back after a long layoff since the D-Rod fight, which was in 2022. It was just about 2 years ago now. It was on that Chimaev Diaz / Diaz Ferguson card that got messed around. Was he supposed to fight Holland on that card? or I can't remember. I think it might have been Ferguson actually. He was meant to fight on that card. But obviously he's got the wins there against Salikov and Ponzinibbio, and then losses to Hamza and Neil Magny. But that's going back quite a while now because he has just come back after a spine surgery or spine injury, which is insane. Prates is an awesome striker. That fight against Radke was cool. Younger fella, pretty decent experience in terms of number of fights for his age, with only 2 less fights than Li Jingliang. Sort of similar frames. Actually, no, never mind. Reach. Prates has a 6.5-inch reach advantage and a 3-inch leg reach advantage. He's an inch taller. I think he's going to get it done. I think Prates by KO TKO in round 2. I think first round might be a bit of a filling out process. I think Prates will tag Lee. Lee will make it back to his corner, and then come out for the second round, and I think he'll struggle to get any traction from there. So I think Prates will get it done in the second round by knockout. Next up, we got the big boys, Tuivasa versus Rozenstruik. Start with Tuivasa, coming in 4-loss streak. He's trying to catch up to Tony. Obviously that loss to Tybura, back-to-back sub-losses to Tybura and Volkov. Volkov back in at UFC 293, wasn't it? The Adesanya Strickland card, I think that was the number of it. Tybura, they headlined that fight back on St. Patrick's Day, back in March. And then losses to Pavlovich, Gane after that win against Derek Lewis, which was impressive. The downfall of Tuivasa has been quite sad. Rozenstruik coming in after that win against Shamil Gaziev, losing to Jolton Almeida, Volkov Blades, and that win against Dorcas in there. I mean, I feel like that Gaziev fight has really, really changed the opinion on Rozenstruik. That was a really good performance by him, but it was equal parts a terrible performance by Gaziev. So it's kind of a tricky one to use as a market, in my opinion. The way I see it is both these guys are going to beat up on the guys. I sort of said this last week about Spivak and Tybura. Sorry, my blank. They're sort of going to beat up on the guys that are terrible, but then when they meet someone tricky, they're going to have trouble. As you can see reflected in their records there. And Derek Lewis of Solby's old now, so Tuivasa beat him, and then when he came up against Gane, Pavlovich, Volkov, and Tybura, all reasonably skilled heavyweights, he took a tumble, we'll say, with the 2 knockouts and the 2 subs. And then for Rozenstruik, Gaziev and Dorcas, they're fights you should be winning, and then Almeida, Volkov, and Blades, all top tier heavyweights, so he lost. I think it's going to be hometown advantage. Hometown advantage, Tuivasa knockout in round 1. I think they're going to come out. Tuivasa's going to stand there and try and trade. I think he's got more power than Rozenstruik. I think he has a better chin than Rozenstruik. And in Tuivasa's fights, that's a large factor in his outcomes. If you look at his fights, Cyril Gane, faster. Arguably, I don't know, hard to say whether he's got a better chin or not, but he's got a solid chin. Pavlovich, faster and hits harder than Tuivasa, I'd say. Volkov, ginormous. Tybura, just more well-rounded. Whereas he came up against Derek Lewis, which I feel like, I think Rozenstruik probably does have better grappling than Tuivasa, fair enough, but I don't think he's going to implement it, so I don't think it's going to be much of a factor. I think we're going to see a stand-up fight here, and as long as the fight's on the feet, I think Tuivasa has a chance. Rozenstruik has been chinned in the past, so that's my reasoning. I've probably taken too long talking about a Tuivasa-Rozenstruik matchup, but that's what I think. Tuivasa by KO in round 1, and we're going to see a shoey, hopefully. It's been a while. Next up, we got Gamrot versus Dan Hooker. You're going to have to hear me out on this one. Whether you agree or not, I don't know. So, Dan Hooker, despite what people may think, and I think the Islam fight did warp a lot of the opinion here, but he is a hard man to take down. He's got decent takedown defense. Unless you're Islam Makhachev, you're not necessarily going to be able to take him down and hold him down for the whole fight. And Gamrot, he's a great grappler, but he is like when I say he doesn't have great control, I don't mean that, because if he tried to control, he probably could. But he is open. He allows scrambles, and I think that's where Hooker can sort of get a upper hand. I can't see Hooker getting controlled for the entire fight, and I can't see Gamrot beating Hooker on the feet. I think Hooker's obviously got that 75-inch reach, which is ginormous for lightweight. He's 6 foot, which is pretty big for lightweight. Good low kicks, good knees, good clinch work, good boxing at range. Like he's a fairly solid dude, and that one against Jalen Turner was a game changer. He has been out for a while, and Gamrot sort of is more of a traditional wrestler, as in he'll shoot for takedowns. So I think Dan Hooker's knees, uppercuts, or just shots down the centre line are going to be pretty important here. Yeah, I don't know. I just think that Jalen Turner win really changed my opinion of Hooker, because before that it was sort of like, oh yeah, you'll beat Nasrat Haqparast, but then, you'll lose to Michael Chandler, then you'll beat Nasrat Haqparast, bouncing back, who's terrible, or, in relativity terrible, and then you'll lose to Islam, you'll lose to Arnold Allen because you retardedly go down to featherweight, and then you'll beat Puelles because he's terrible, but then you'll beat Jalen Turner, who's actually like fairly decent, and it's not like he beat Jalen Turner in the way most people do. He beat him on the feet, like by striking with him. Most people take Turner down and beat him there. Yeah. So I've got Dan Hooker by decision. I feel like it's going to be quite unpopular, and probably a lot of people will frown on it as a pick, but I truly do believe that Hooker does have a good chance to win this fight. I don't know about finishing Gamrot. Pretty good chin. Beneil Dariush hit him with some pretty fucking clean shots in that fight they had, even though Gamrot ended up losing by decision. I think it was a split decision. But yeah, I can't see Hooker necessarily knocking him out. Maybe, probably not. So I'm going to go Hooker by decision, because I think he's definitely got the chance to win this one. The next up, Kai Kara-France versus Steve Erceg. As much as I'd love to let my New Zealand bias come to fruition once more, it's a really tricky one, because I'd love to say that I'm confident in Kai winning this, but I'm not. I'm not confident. It's one of those ones that I can see a path to victory for him, but I don't know how likely that is to play out. Sadly, I think Erceg is probably slightly too good and slightly too technical. I think is going to be the biggest thing for Kara-France. Erceg's boxing is just so tight and clean, and Kara-France is just probably spam a jab and then chuck an overhand when he sees a chance, and I can just see Erceg capitalizing on that too often. I struggle to see Erceg being able to implement a grappling game, because I think Kai has fought better grapplers in Albazi and Askarov, who haven't really been able to dominate him on the ground as such, although somehow that Albazi did get that decision, but we won't talk about that too much. As much as I would absolutely love to say that I think Kara-France is going to win, and I'm confident in him, and I think he's going to knock him out, I think if Pantoja isn't knocking out... but Pantoja's stand-up's terrible. All I'm going to say, my pick is Erceg by decision. I genuinely cannot stress enough how much I'd prefer to be picking Kai, and I'd like to pick Kai, but I just think Erceg's too good for him. There's a lot more experience on the Kai side, and if this goes the other way, I'm going to be super pissed off, because I'd love to have picked Kai and got it right. But yeah, Erceg it is. I think he's just too good for him. Anyway, I'll move on. Okay, DDP versus Izzy. So we got Drickus coming in, obviously title fight one against Sean, and before that we had the run of Whittaker, Brunson, Till, and Tavares. I'm not actually sure what Drickus' record is in the UFC now, but I think he's on at least like 6 or 7 wins in a row. He's obviously undefeated in the UFC. Izzy coming off the loss to Strickland, and then the loss win against Poatan, and then the wins against Cannonier and Robert Whittaker. I have a pretty strong opinion on this fight, in that Izzy is going to be too slick for Drickus. I think Drickus is too sloppy in this particular matchup. I think it's, if I was to compare it to a fight, I think I'm going to go Costa, the Costa Izzy fight. Not going to say Izzy's going to style on him as badly as that did, but I think what's going to happen is we're going to see in the first round Izzy being very evasive, making Duplessis chase him around the octagon, and then also making him miss a lot. And I think we're going to see, not, I know because sort of his cardio myth sort of has been debunked after the Strickland fight somehow. But I still am a bit questioning of Duplessis because he does like sort of lomp around a bit after he gets like sort of a bit tired. Even in that Strickland fight, he did it. And I think if he's standing in front of Izzy like that, I think Izzy is going to catch him. If Izzy is even 3/4 of the fighter he was, or that we think he is, I think there's two outcomes in this fight. I think we get a vintage Adesanya performance. He probably finishes or gets close and completely styles on Dricus, makes him look silly, and we go, oh my god, Dricus / and or Strickland should have never been champions. That was an off night. Izzy's off night back in Sydney last year facilitated 6 months of Strickland and 6 months of DDP as champion. Things are now back to how it is. The whole narrative will switch up on Adesanya, and he'll be the consensus second greatest, some people argue greatest middleweight ever in the UFC, and it'll be back to that, or it's going to be over for him, and Dricus is going to, I don't know, drown him. But I think it's going to be vintage Izzy. I think we're going to get a vintage Izzy performance. I think he's going to come out, as I say, I think he's going to make him miss and make him run around after him in the first round. We're going to see Dricus get off the stool coming into the second. He's going to be a little bit late, but he's not going to be puffed or tired because I'm not discrediting an MMA fighter's gas tank. Obviously, they all prepare and can go for 5 rounds, but that doesn't matter. It doesn't mean they're going to look great for 5 rounds. I think Dricus is going to overexert himself in the first round, going to get over aggressive, sloppy on the feet, as he might tag him a few times. As I say, get off his stool in the second round, a bit hesitant, not hesitant, but a bit sloppy, sort of plodding towards Adesanya. Adesanya picks up off a couple of counter shots, and I think it's going to be all over. And I've got Adesanya by KO TKO in round 2. I don't know. I just think Izzy's back. I think this layoff has probably done him wonders. Yeah. So you've heard enough about that fight. I've sort of gone on about that. Overall, obviously, I think it's a decent card. Those early prelims, gee, I didn't realize how evil Morne Vista looks in the background of this photo. Damn. Some decent prelims showing off some local talent like Nickel, Tom Nolan, Jack Jenkins, Casey O'Neill, Josh Kulabauer, Junior Tuffer. Solid main card with Lee versus Prates, Tuivasa, home country, against Rosenstruik, Gamrot versus Hooker, good fight, Kaikara Franz versus Usyk, the ANZAC battle, and then we got DDP versus Izzy to top it off. I think it's a great fight card. You got enough heat in that main event to sort of cover off that side of things. The co-main's a bit more friendly, and I can't imagine Gamrot talking a lot of heat against Hooker in the featured bout, so there's not a whole lot of trash talk going on there. Izzy and Dricus make up for that, and will probably provide a great fight themselves, but then they're backed up by sort of some decent fights before that. I think it's going to be a good event. I think it's probably going to be worth watching start to finish. Main card is awesome, as I've said probably 5 or 6 times now. Prelims are good. Early prelims are decent. Yeah, for sure worth tuning in. And let's go Adesanya. Let's see him reclaim that belt. I'm getting a bit tired of Dricus, to be honest. I think some of the stuff he says is thought out. I don't think it's him being himself. And whether you hate him or love him, I think Izzy is pretty authentic, to be honest. So yeah, I'd prefer to see him as champ. Yeah, so thanks for tuning in. I sort of dragged on a couple of those fights. Hopefully gave a little bit more information than usual. If you've somehow made it to 25 minutes, I applaud you. You've probably done better than Dricus is going to do against Izzy, lasting 25 minutes. Yeah, so if you could hit the like button and subscribe, I would absolutely love that. Probably be back next week. What do we got next week? Is it it's Borrello versus Cannonier next week? I think Apex card. Anyway, yeah, awesome. Thank you for listening. Thank you for showing up. Appreciate it. And catch you next week. Cheers.